Hey everyone, today we're going to dig into a philosophy for life that's actually pretty simple, but boy is it challenging. It all comes down to two powerful words, expect and attempt. This isn't just some abstract idea either, it's something that has powered some truly incredible journeys. So let's get into what it's all about.
So here it is, the core of the whole thing. Expect great things from God. Attempt great things for God. It's from a guy named William Carey. And when you think about it, this one sentence is basically a whole worldview. It splits perfectly into two halves, right? First, you have this mindset of expectation, and second, you have this call to action. We're going to break down both of those pieces. But before we can really get into the philosophy, I think it's super important to understand the person behind it. I mean, to really get these words, you have to get the man who actually lived them out. So who exactly was this William Carey, and how did he land on such a radical idea? What's so interesting about William Carey is that he wasn't some big shot, high ranking official. Nope, he was just a regular working pastor. And he looked around at his friends, his peers, and basically said, hey, we talk a great game about what God can do, but when are we going to actually get up and do something? It was a total wake up call, a challenge to stop talking and start doing. And believe me, he wasn't all talk. The guy actually walked the walk. His whole life story is like a masterclass in putting his money where his mouth was. He left everything he knew, the comfort of England, for a completely new, totally uncertain life in India. And get this, at a huge personal cost, he spent his life translating the Bible into 6 different Indian languages, just so people could hear these ideas in their own language for the very first time. Okay, so that gives you a picture of the man himself. Now let's switch gears and get into his philosophy, starting with that first piece, expectation. I mean, what does it really mean to expect great things? All right, so the sources we're looking at make a really important distinction here between faith and hope. Think of it like this. Faith, that's trust. It's the foundation. But hope is something more active. It's defined as the expectation of good things. It's this forward-looking attitude, this sense of anticipation that something good is just around the corner. So we're not just talking about wishful thinking here, not at all. This is a mindset that is actively on the lookout for the impossible. You know that phrase, walking by faith, not by sight? That's exactly it. It's about carrying around this constant expectation that stuff beyond what we can see or understand, well, it can and will happen. And where does this kind of hope come from? Well, according to Carey's way of thinking, it's not based on your circumstances or how you're feeling on a particular day. Not at all. The foundation is this deep, solid conviction in the promises of God. That's what makes it stable. That's what gives it that brightness, no matter what's going on around you. Okay, so let's say you've got it. You have this mindset of expectation. But that's just one half of the puzzle, right? Now we get to the second part, attempting great things. And yeah, this is where it gets a little tricky. Because how in the world do you know what you're supposed to attempt? Let's get real for a second. The source material brings up a huge dilemma we all face. The Bible gives us these amazing principles to live by, but it's not an instruction manual for every single decision in our modern lives, is it? So, what are you supposed to do? I mean, think about it. From these massive, life-altering choices like who you're going to marry, all the way down to tiny things like which brand of orange juice to buy at the store. None of that is spelled out for us. We're just constantly forced to make choices, big and small. So the answer, at least according to this philosophy, isn't about frantically searching for some hidden verse that's going to tell you what to do. It's about developing something called a renewed mind. And the idea here is that as you really soak in the teachings of the Bible, your whole way of thinking starts to change. Your perspective, your values, they get transformed. And then you start to just naturally make choices that line up with that new way of seeing the world. Okay, but we have to talk about the elephant in the room, right? There's a really critical piece here. What happens when you do all this? You expect good things, you attempt good things, and life is still really, really hard. What about all the suffering and the unfairness in the world? This quote really just cuts right to the chase. Life is unfair. God is fair. Don't get the two mixed up. It's arguing for this fundamental separation. The world we live in, it's just unfair sometimes. Hardship is part of the deal. And the whole point is not to confuse the brokenness of the world with the character of God. And this idea just smashes a really common misconception, doesn't it? This notion that if you have faith, your life should be cushy, no problems, lots of health, lots of wealth. But that's put right up against the actual reality of who you're following. A leader who was poor, who was rejected by everyone, and who was ultimately nailed to a cross. That doesn't exactly scream a life of comfort. So this leads to a really profound shift in what you're actually expecting. The promise isn't for a comfortable life, it's for a reliable one. The goal isn't to somehow dodge all suffering, but to find a God who is reliable in the middle of that suffering.
And boom, that brings us full circle, right back to William Carey. He never said his success was because he was a genius or super charismatic. Nope. He said it was because he could plod. I love that word. It just means he could keep putting one foot in front of the other, day after day, persevering, especially when it was tough. That plodding, that was the real engine behind all his attempts.
And all of this leads to the final, and I think most powerful takeaway from his life and this whole philosophy. See, when you put these two things together, this radical expectation and these relentless attempts, something amazing happens. Your whole relationship with the idea of failure starts to shift. And here's the final thought I really want to leave you with. For someone like Carey, the thing to be afraid of isn't failing when you attempt something great. No, the real fear, the thing that should keep you up at night, is pouring your whole life into succeeding perfectly and flawlessly at a bunch of things that just don't matter in the end. So the question for all of us is, what are we attempting? And does it really, truly matter?